There are men who walk through the world like shadows. They are not hated. They are not feared. Only ignored. People speak over them. Women treat them as optional. Weaker men use them as stepping stones. And the most curious part is that none of this happens by accident. Disrespect always follows a pattern. An invisible architecture that Machiavelli described without naming anyone. Those who do not impose presence are shaped by the will of others. Observe in silence. There are 5 types of men who are never respected, no matter how hard they try, how much they strive, how good they believe they are. 5 behavioral structures, 5 power errors, 5 weaknesses the world senses long before the man himself does. The question is not why. The question is something else. Which one of them are you hiding in? Type 1. The man who begs for attention. He believes that being seen is the same as being respected. That is the first mistake. Respect is never born from pursuit. It is born from the weight of absence, from the presence that asks for nothing, from what is felt before it is shown. The man who begs for attention lives in a state of strategic deprivation, a kind of weakness that doesn't need to be declared. It leaks through gestures, through the pace of his voice, through the speed with which he responds. He offers himself before he is asked. He appears before he is remembered. He tries to fill spaces no one requested to be occupied. And each of these movements reduces his authority without him noticing. People sense the urgency in his eyes, the anxiety in his pauses, the hunger for validation hidden in every attempt to please. And silently they lower him in hierarchy. The search for attention reveals a truth he fears to admit. He is not enough for himself, and the world punishes any man who is not enough for himself. Watch how he behaves in an ordinary conversation. He laughs louder than he should, agrees too quickly, explains what was not asked, forces presence as if trying to prove he exists. The excess of words exposes his weakness. His voice tries to fill an internal void his gaze cannot hold. In the workplace, he volunteers for everything, accepts tasks that do not suit him, makes himself available at hours no one respects, and believes that this goodwill will earn him recognition. But he receives the opposite. He becomes useful and disposable. Usefulness without authority is servitude disguised. In relationships, he gives before he is desired, offers attention where no investment was made, asks too many questions, adapts too much, shows interest in a way that exhausts the mystery, the strength, and the distance that generate attraction. Exposed need destroys perceived value, and no one respects what appears too available. The truth is simple. Any man who begs for attention is willing to pay any price not to be ignored, and the world charges heavily. The strategy is different. It is not speaking less, it is speaking only what is necessary. It is not being always available. It is being available only when your presence alters the environment. It is not trying to be seen. It is letting your absence make noise. Authority is born from restraint. When someone reaches out to you, do not respond with urgency. Urgency is emotional submission disguised as interest. Pause. Observe. Respond in a time that does not reveal neediness. A controlled pause is a language few know how to read, and even fewer know how to use. In groups, reduce your movements. The man who does not fight for space occupies it effortlessly. A slow gaze, an unmoving posture, and calculated silence create a presence that needs no approval. Attention will come not because you asked, but because your indifference carries weight. In the social arena, mystery has more value than visibility. Observation has more force than participation. The absence of urgency creates hierarchy. Yours. Deep down, the man who begs for attention fears disappearing. But it is precisely controlled disappearance that creates impact. Strategic absence is louder than any attempt to prove oneself. Now the inevitable question falls on you. In how many situations did you speak too much, appear too much, or offer yourself too much, only to be treated as less? Type 2. The man who suppresses his anger until it consumes him. There is a type of man who believes that being controlled means never showing anger. He doesn't realize that by suffocating his instinct, he turns it into a disease. Anger doesn't disappear, it hides. And everything that hides grows in the dark. The man who suppresses his anger lives like a silent bomb. On the outside, he appears gentle. On the inside, he stores fragments of humiliation. Every interruption, every disdain, every microaggression is swallowed without reaction. He confuses passivity with peace, but it is only postponement. This man doesn't realize that the world reads his restraint as weakness. He believes he is being mature, but in the eyes of those who observe him, he is merely giving up on himself. Repressed anger creates two simultaneous problems, one internal which corrodes, one external which disqualifies him. Internally, his mind fractures. He begins to rationalize abuses, to justify disrespect, to accept emotional, social, and professional scraps. He becomes accustomed to being overlooked, and tolerates what any conscious man would reject without hesitation. Externally, the world perceives his lack of reaction as permission. The hierarchy is redrawn without him saying a word. He becomes the man one can speak to in any manner, ask anything of, cross any boundary. Repression, contrary to what he imagines, doesn't make him superior. It makes him predictable, and anything predictable is easily dominated. The explosion doesn't take long. It's not a choice. It's inevitable. When he finally reacts, his anger is no longer strength. It is loss of control. He loses authority at the exact moment he tries to reclaim it. The fury that should have been channeled becomes evidence of the instability many already suspected. Anger, when repressed, destroys. But when understood, directed, and used, it builds dominance. The problem was never feeling. The problem is not knowing how to use it. Anger is a compass. It points to the place where you are allowing yourself to be violated. Ignoring it is ignoring yourself. The strategy is not to explode. It is to contain with awareness. It is to observe the instant the blood heats, yet not surrender to impulse. It is to keep the face still while the eyes register everything. It is to speak only when the word is a weapon, not an emotional discharge. True emotional control is not the absence of anger. It is the domestication of instinct. It is turning fire into direction. It is saying no without raising your voice. It is withdrawing your presence without explaining the reason. It is stopping favors without announcing the change. It is cutting access without making noise. Coldness is born from this balance, feeling everything, showing little, acting with precision. Anger should not be repressed. It should be silenced on the outside and sharpened on the inside. A tool, not a burden. A blade, not a weight. Observe yourself. Notice how many times you endured humiliations disguised as jokes. How many times you accepted criticism from someone who didn't deserve even your opinion. How many times you let things slide. How many times you swallowed them. How many times you allowed them. And now, ask yourself slowly, has your anger been serving you? Or have you been serving it? Type 3. The excessively honest man. There are men who believe that absolute sincerity is an unattainable virtue. They display themselves like open books, proud of hiding nothing. They confuse transparency with character. They confuse exposure with strength. And they pay the invisible price of naivete. The truth is simple and brutal. In the social game, the one who reveals everything loses before he even begins. Unrestricted honesty is not a sign of purity. It is a sign of carelessness. It is the abdication of one's own mystery, the territory where respect is built. When a man explains too much, justifies too much, confesses too much, he hands his emotional map to anyone. And whoever knows your internal lines controls your weak points. The excessively honest man speaks as if he were standing before someone worthy of all his truth, but almost no one is. Most people are not trying to understand intentions. They are trying to decipher vulnerabilities. And naive honesty offers all of them. Observe how he behaves in ordinary conversations. He opens his daily life with unnecessary details. He shares insecurities that should have no witnesses. He confesses limits that should have no voice. He exposes thoughts that should remain in the shadows. He believes he is creating connection, but he is only reducing his authority. Immediate transparency makes him predictable, and whatever becomes predictable loses power. In professional environments, his mistake is even worse. He reveals plans before the right time. He shares doubts with people who owe him no loyalty. He explains his difficulties with the childish hope that this will generate understanding. It generates only opportunity to be surpassed, ignored, or shaped. The excessively honest man doesn't understand that the world operates in layers. What is spoken defines hierarchy. What is omitted defines dominance. In the realm of attraction, his behavior is even more fatal. He exposes interest too quickly, reveals feelings too soon, opens vulnerabilities that should be sculpted in silence. Error after error, he disarms himself before those he should first be studying. Vulnerability displayed without merit does not attract, it weakens. The strategic question is, why does he do this? Simple. Because he fears the solitude of silence. He fears appearing distant, cold, calculated. He fears not being liked. But it is exactly this attempt to please that destroys him. Power does not arise from what you say. It arises from what you refuse to reveal. There is information that can only exist inside you. Fears, ambitions, scars, future moves, internal roots that must not be delivered to common eyes. Honesty is not the enemy. Naivete is. The strategic man understands that telling the truth does not require telling everything. He chooses what strengthens him and silences what exposes him. He speaks with precision, never with urgency. He withholds not out of malice, but out of intelligence. He preserves himself because he knows authority does not live in absolute clarity. It lives in calculated shadow. Observe a meeting. The excessively honest man explains every detail of his process. The conscious man reveals only what is necessary to move the negotiation forward. One offers everything, the other offers control. The difference between them is hierarchical. Raw honesty destroys those who don't know how to use it. Strategic honesty transforms presence into power. Now, before moving on, let a question settle in silence. How much truth have you handed to people who didn't deserve even your silence? Type 4. The man who seeks acceptance. There are men who cannot bear the idea of being rejected. They mold their voice, their gaze, their posture, and even their opinions to fit into environments that do not respect them. They live like emotional chameleons, believing group acceptance is the same as safety. But every exaggerated adaptation has a price: loss of hierarchy. The truth few admit is simple. The more a man tries to be accepted, the less he is respected. The masculine world operates through invisible orders. Groups test, observe, measure limits. And when they identify someone willing to bow just to belong, the demotion happens silently, almost ritually. The man who seeks acceptance doesn't understand this. He smiles when he is ignored. He laughs at jokes made at his expense. He pretends comfort where discomfort exists. He adapts to the environment so he won't be expelled from it. And in doing so, he expels himself from who he is. The paradox is cruel. The more he tries to belong, the more foreign he becomes. Watch him in any group. He agrees with opinions he doesn't respect, praises actions he doesn't admire, carries himself like a mirror, not a presence. He is absorbed by the collective identity until he disappears. And when he disappears, respect disappears with him. Groups do not value the man who offers himself. They value the one who remains intact. A man who abandons his identity to be accepted commits a fatal mistake. He hands his emotional center of gravity to others. He becomes dependent on their mood, approval, and validation. He becomes a puppet moved by the eyes around him. And no one respects a puppet. Socially, this man is treated as subordinate. Behind the scenes, he is seen as predictable. And the predictable does not intimidate. It does not command distance. It does not create value. Predictability makes room for being ignored or used. In the professional world, his need for acceptance becomes even more visible. He accepts tasks that diminish him, volunteers for roles no one wants. He is the helper, never the leader. His usefulness becomes his prison. In relationships, the cost is higher. He tries too hard to be pleasant, gives too much, yields too quickly, never creates tension, never establishes boundaries. Desire dies where healthy conflict does not exist. Acceptance should never be sought. It should be a consequence. Respected men belong to groups without dissolving into them. They participate, but they do not surrender themselves. They listen, but they do not mold their identity. They occupy space without asking permission. The strategy is another: calculated distance. Distance is not isolation. It is refusing to pay the emotional price of belonging. It is maintaining an internal line that no one crosses. It is allowing others to approach, but only to the point you define. Distance creates mystery. Mystery creates value. Value creates respect. The man who seeks acceptance fears loneliness, but he doesn't realize that strategic solitude is a source of power. When you do not depend on the group begins to depend on your presence. When you don't seek inclusion, your absence becomes heavy. And what becomes heavy? Commands. Ask yourself without haste: how many times have you made yourself smaller to avoid displeasing others? And how many of those times did anyone truly notice your sacrifice? Type 5. The man who talks too much. There are men who believe presence is built with words, who think strength lies in explanation, who assume safety comes from constant justification. They talk and talk and talk, and without noticing, each sentence removes a layer of authority. The truth is simple and ancient. The man who talks too much hands over his own map. The man who doesn't control his tongue reveals intentions too early, exposes weaknesses that should remain invisible, releases emotions that should have been contained, turns every conversation into an involuntary confession. Excessive speech is not communication, it is leakage. Watch him in social environments. He tries to fill silence with long stories, describes his achievements as if afraid the world will forget him, justifies mistakes before anyone questions them, explains reasons no one asked to hear. He interprets others' silence as a threat and tries to cover it with noise. But silence was never a threat. It was a test, and he failed. The man who talks too much becomes predictable. Others sense his emotional rhythm. They notice when he is anxious, insecure, excited, or interested. Continuous talking exposes everything, and everything exposed becomes a weapon against him. In meetings, this man doesn't understand the invisible dynamics of power. He thinks speaking more makes him more relevant. In reality, it makes him replaceable. He hands over strategy, reveals his cards, exposes hesitation. He distributes information that should be protected and believes he is participating, but he is only exposing himself. Authority does not speak to fill space. It speaks to direct. In personal relationships, the mistake is even worse. He tries to impress with details, explanations, speeches, confuses connection with verbal overflow, fails to see that the more he talks, the less he is heard. The more he opens up, the less he is valued. Excessive speech makes him emotionally too accessible, and anything too accessible loses value. Attraction does not come from exposure. It comes from suggestion. The man who talks too much does not know how to suggest. He only knows how to spill. The root of this behavior is always the same: fear of emptiness, fear of not being noticed, fear that silence will reveal what he tries to avoid, that his presence alone is not enough. But silence is exactly what creates presence. It is the space between words that gives weight to a phrase. It is the pause that creates tension. It is restraint that creates mystery. Power is not in what you say. It is in what you refuse to say. The strategic man speaks little. He chooses the moment, chooses the tone, chooses the size of the response, and above all chooses the impact of silence. In conflict, he observes before reacting, allows the other person to reveal more than they should. Silence protects him and exposes the opponent. Silence elevates him and uncovers the impulsive. Silence creates hierarchy. He learns he doesn't need to explain, doesn't need to justify, doesn't need to defend himself. Defense is noise. Authority is stillness. The rule is clear. Speak only what increases your power. Silence everything that reduces it. Every word must be a tool, never an escape. Now let a question settle without haste. How many times did you speak just to fill space, and ended up revealing exactly what you should have kept? In the end, respect was never about physical strength, talent, or good intentions. It has always been about invisible boundaries, about the space you protect, about the silence you control, about the absence that weighs more than the presence of others. The 5 types of men the world never respects share the same flaw. They give too much. They speak too much. They feel too much. They accept too much. They reveal too much. You are not disrespected for what you lack, but for what you overflow, for the excess you hand out, for the absence of containment. Now only one question remains, the only one that matters. Which of these 5 reflections still lives in you, and when will you kill it?